The Dorob National Park, situated on the central coast of Namibia, is an area where the name unlocks a fantasy of vast open spaces and stunning beauty. A place where travelers journey from afar to experience the breathtaking splendor and multitude of contrasts offered by this robust gem of Africa. A timeless asset that was molded through millennia, nurtured by Mother Nature, and loved by those who have marveled at her beauty. It is a beauty that once lost could never be regained. Since Namibia's independence in 1990, the country has been dedicated to the conservation of Namibia's natural heritage. Namibia has once again showed to the world the nation's commitment and key role towards global, regional and national conservation, along with sustainable development through the proclamation of the Dorob National Park on the 1st of December 2010. And its launch in 2011, and the gazetting of specific regulations for Dorob National Park in line with the Nature Conservation Ordinance of 1975 on the 15th of August 2012. The traditional Topnar authority proposed the name Dorob, meaning dry land, as a suitable name for the new national park, which was vital to ensure that the local communities are involved in the management of the park. This new park has provided the last link to include the Sperrgebied National Park, Namibia'S Park and Skeleton Coast Park, which together has made it possible for Namibia's entire 1,570-kilometer-long coastline to become a protected area, which now makes up an area exceeding 10 million hectares. Together, these parks make up what is proposed and commonly suggested as the Namibia'S Skeleton Coast National Park, which is not only the biggest park in Africa, but also ranks as number 8 in the world, with Northeast Greenland's National Park in Denmark being the largest in the world. The Dorob National Park is just more than 8,000 square kilometers, stretches from the Khoikhsib River to the Ugab River. It is the 5th largest state-protected area in Namibia. On its southern border lies the world-renowned Namibia'S Park, famous for its towering red sand dunes and deep-cut river gorges. Its northern boundary is bordered by the famous Skeleton Coast Park, famous for the many relics of shipwrecks, bleached whale bones, and tales of misfortunes which befell many of the earlier explorers and marooned sailors during the centuries. Amazingly, Dorob also includes 4 coastal wetlands of international importance. The Walvis Bay Ramsar site, 30 kilometers of beach between Swakopmund and Walvis Bay, the Cape Cross Lagoons, and Mile 4 Saltworks. Due to increasing holidaymakers, tourists, adventure seekers, and economic activities throughout the region, much of Namibia's coastline has been subjected to a tremendous increase in vehicle traffic, which has caused severe damage to the fragile Namib desert ecology. It has become vital to conserve this sensitive area, but at the same time not discourage visitors to be a part of this spectacular tourist destination in Namibia. For these reasons, the newly proclaimed Dorob National Park is a prime example of smart conservation. Among the biggest ecological conservation concerns are the breeding sites of some globally threatened bird species. Most of the breeding sites for birds are to be found on gravel plains, salt pans, and in between dunes hidden amongst the small pebbles and hardy desert plant life. These lie prone to vehicles traveling across these surfaces, unaware of the exposed nests that are easily destroyed by the onslaught of off-road driving. In many parts, the vast gravel plains are covered with fields of minute plants known as lichens. These organisms are at the mercy of uncontrolled vehicle traffic, taking decades to recover, and it might never return to their full former glory. Soil formation is an extremely slow process in the Namib Desert. In some cases, only a few millimeters of topsoil can form after several millennia. When traveling by road or by light aircraft over the vast desert terrain, one cannot help but notice the incredible amount of vehicle tracks crossing one another over the desert. Not only do the vehicle tracks reveal the extent of the damage to the sensitive environment, but has also caused a lot of visual pollution for those coming to enjoy the Namib Desert's beauty. Closer to the coastal areas where fog commonly occurs, gypsum soils are very common and are extremely prone to vehicle tire impact. The upper crust of this sensitive soil type can easily be damaged, and one can still make out tracks from ox wagons used during Namibia's German colonial days. Indiscriminate use of four-wheel drive vehicles and quad bikes in one of the most ecologically sensitive environments on the planet has been taking a toll on this region for a long time. Therefore, in order to begin with the restoration of the coastal environment and its biological diversity, Cabinet decided to declare and gazette the central Namibian coast as the Dorob National Park. A profile of the Namibian coast was commissioned by NACOMA, or the Namibian Coast Conservation and Management Project, implemented under the auspices of the Ministry of Environment and Tourism, to develop and foster an integrated coastal zone management system. After extensive scientific studies and cooperation between conservation authorities, tour operators, private sector and local, regional and national authorities, a plan was drawn up to better conserve the coastal environment. According to the Nature Conservation Ordinance, Section 14, the area will be protecting wildlife, fisheries, plant life, and also objects of geological, archaeological, historical, and other scientific interest for the benefit and enjoyment of the inhabitants of Namibia. Through intensive conservation and sustainable use of existing resources, this region can now enjoy much greater care of the natural environment and wonders, whilst still allowing the local and national economy to flourish, and those visiting the area to enjoy all that it has to offer. Dorob National Park is unique in the sense that its aim is to find the perfect balance between leisure, recreation, and conservation. The landscape varies from river deltas to dune belts, gravel plains, and wonderful open stretches of coastline. Each different area containing some unique element or natural wonder, which may be prone to damage or complete destruction. Within these different areas, certain core areas have been set aside for the protection of some of the Namib Desert's rare and endangered species. In these core areas, no traffic is allowed wherever an area has been demarcated and signposted as an exclusion zone. In other cases, multiple use areas for adventure tourism was also set aside, so that the very same people who want to help contribute to the protection of this unique area will not be prohibited. Visitors can easily get into these areas and just need to obtain permits from the Ministry of Environment and Tourism. For example, the dune belt between Long Beach and Walvis Bay, for which you can obtain a free permit from the Ministry of Environment and Tourism. This is a move away from the traditional national parks concept, whereby visitors to the Dorob National Park still have ease of access to sites they wish to visit and enjoy the multitude of recreational activities. It has become a favorable situation for all parties involved. The Namib Desert has fascinated scientists and the general public for many decades. After all, it is the oldest desert on the planet. Life here has to cope with the many hardships that Mother Nature throws at it. And as a result of time and natural selection, the amount and variety of life forms in this dry corner of Namibia is astounding. The climate here is determined by various factors, the main one being the ocean. The cold Benguela current, traveling up Africa's southeast Atlantic coastline, is cold and is not only the cause of the relatively cool coastal climate, but also the apparent lack of rain along Namibia's coastline. Moisture does reach the shore though, but not as one would expect it to. For at least 2/3 of the year, moisture rolls in from the ocean as fog. This fog drifts across the desert landscape, bringing with it life-sustaining moisture that is utilized by an endless variety of uniquely adapted desert organisms. One can say that life here depends on sunlight and the presence of fog. Although larger life forms are relatively scarce, it is the little creatures that make up the massive number of life forms for an arid area such as the Namib Desert. Much of Dorob National Park's land organisms are not always noticeable, other than the few plants and small insects running across the barren desert surface. However, this perception is entirely inaccurate. The amount of biological diversity, or biodiversity, rivals many other regions on our planet, which are often not nearly as inhospitable as the Namib Desert. This is due to the variety of life forms that have had so much time to adapt to all the challenging conditions. Between Swakopmund and Walvis Bay is a small but fascinating dune field. These dunes were originally part of the Great Namib Sand Sea further south. At first, this area looks abandoned and dead, but closer observation reveals that it is alive, a living desert. Observing the footprints left behind in the sand during the night and mornings can be a fun activity for the whole family. Tour operators such as Living Desert Tours specialize in viewing the so-called Little Five of the dunes. They can almost guarantee a glimpse of amazing creatures, such as the Namakwa chameleon, as well as ideal places to find their breeding areas. During one of these trips, you could find web-footed geckos, sidewinders, gerbils, and shovel-snouted lizards. The dune belt is also home to some of Namibia's endemic reptiles, such as the Fitzsimmons burrowing skink. Early mornings, when the fog rolls across the dunes, the fog-basking beetle, a small insect, is already at the crest of a dune, standing bottom up and head down, facing the drifting fog. As the irregular surface of the hard exoskeleton traps the fog, it forms droplets of water, which then slowly filters down along the ridges to the mouth. The thirsty beetle swallows the droplets eagerly. bird life is abundant, and flocks numbering in their thousands can be seen at certain special locations along our Namibian coastline. There are numerous vital bird life areas and areas that have special status and protection. One of these areas is the Walvis Bay Ramsar site. Ramsar refers to a protected wetland area for birdlife of international importance. The lagoon boasts extensive flocks of greater and lesser flamingos, as well as an abundance of smaller birds such as black-winged stilts, avocets, and many other small waders. There is a good chance of encountering great white pelicans in certain areas close to the shore. For example, the waterfront in Walvis Bay. Several parking locations are available to view the bird life, or to take a walk along a walkway covering a large section of the lagoon. One may visit the Swakop River mouth on foot, and not by off-road vehicle, to view interesting bird life feeding in the shallow waters. Or perhaps even see some of the more uncommon bird species skulking through the reeds. Another site is the saltwork areas of both Walvis Bay and Swakopmund, where the man-made ponds for extracting salt through evaporation attract many different species of birds. Travelling past the Walvis Bay saltworks in the direction of a local fishing spot, Palkies, one could travel further north with a 4x4 vehicle towards Pelican Point. Fascinating bird life, as well as a seal colony, can be viewed here. At Donkey Bay, named Skeleton Bay by surfing professionals, is one of the 10 best barreling waves on the planet. This area is difficult to access due to thick sand, but is worthwhile. Hence the name Donkey Bay, as the old 4x4 vehicles had to engage low-range gear, known then as donkey gear. The Dorob National Park contains a large variety of plant life, most of which is hardly noticeable due to their small size. Close to the settlement of Vlotskasbaken, one can find a dense field of peculiar organisms called lichens. Lichens are tiny plants growing within the fog belt to obtain their moisture. There are countless lichen varieties in Namibia. The most prominent one growing in this area is the Telocystis capensis, a small orange-like grassy lichen. Driving or walking over them will certainly damage or kill these small but fascinating organisms of the Namib Desert. They act as an anchor point for grass seeds as well as providing shelter for small insects. They also help stabilize the precious upper soil layers against wind and occasional water erosion. In very dry seasons, springbok have been observed consuming certain species of lichens. Species on the gravel plains may look insignificant, but they're quite fascinating to see up close. These include pencil bushes, the hard-to-get lithops or stone plants, as well as the dollar bushes with leaves resembling round coins. All these plants utilize coastal fog in some way in order to survive. The Dorob National Park does not only aim to help protect the integrity of the Namib Desert ecology, but also to preserve our own human history. Human occupation in this area dates back many thousands of years. Evidence is found at various sites throughout Dorob National Park. The Kuiseb Delta, which is one of the most southerly points of the Dorob National Park, has been home to humans long before the first colonizers landed on the Namibian coast. There are sites with clay pot shards and ostrich eggshell necklace beads. Much of these rich archaeological treasures have been removed or destroyed over many years of uncontrolled activity. Further upstream in the direction of Rooibank are particularly hard to find ancient clay banks hidden amongst the dunes. You can even appreciate preserved elephant footprints from numerous centuries ago. There are also sites in the same clay surfaces with preserved human footprints. These were most likely from the early Nara melon harvesters, the ancient Topna people. A cultural visit to villages in the vicinity of the Criss River will be a great chance to learn more about what life would be like if living in close contact with the desert. The Topna people have built a rich cultural history of goat and cattle farming, as well as harvesting melons from the Nara plants. The Nara plant is endemic to the desert along Namibia's coast and grows only on sand dunes where subterranean water exists. The Nara plant, also known as the butternut, is a particularly interesting plant. It is completely green in color, even the flowers. Instead of leaves, it only has thorns. The use of the thorns is to help deter herbivores, while at the same time shade the interior of the plant to reduce water loss. Once a year, the Nara plant produces a crop of round, spiky fruits the size of a papaya, and is harvested by the Topna people. These fruits are highly nutritious and, quite remarkably, have sustained the Topna people for centuries. The seeds are allowed to dry while the rest of the Nara plant is cooked. Nothing is wasted, and animal as well as humans share in this delicacy. The dried seeds are bagged for sale in the town or used for their own use. They are considered to be a bit of a delicacy and can be nibbled on as they are, or even roasted and salted. The life of the Topna people is a way of life which most visitors cannot imagine. Yet it is amazing what the Topna folks have achieved with limited resources at their disposal. Besides the Topna people, one might encounter springbok and ostrich, as well as the occasional gemsbok along the Criss riverbed. Most of the incredible sights to enjoy inside Dorob National Park can easily be visited in a day. Cape Cross Seal Reserve is perhaps the best known of all, and is situated just more than an hour's drive from Swakopmund. This place does not only host thousands of Cape fur seals, but is also a very historical site for Namibia. This is where the first Europeans, Diego Cao and his crew from Portugal, set foot in this country over 500 years ago. A small stone cross, or padrao, was erected here as a sign of their passage. Cape Cross is also home to where the first small railroad in Namibia was built for the purpose of processing seal meat and blubber in the late 19th century. Then, of course, there are the seals. Namibia contains over 60% of the global Cape fur seal population. There are several breeding colonies along our coastline, but Cape Cross is certainly the most accessible. Every year in late November to about middle December, the females give birth to pups that are covered in pitch black fur. This event almost doubles the seal population in a matter of days. However, lack of nutrition, predators such as brown hyena, and occasionally black-backed jackals, as well as the dangers of hypothermia, canine distemper, and big bulls accidentally trampling the little pups, makes for a very small survival rate for the young. From Cape Cross, one can visit a petrified salt lagoon with unique salt crystal formations, which are about 400 years old, or visit Namibia's own Dead Sea, situated about 28 kilometers from Cape Cross Island. Here you have the opportunity to relax and enjoy the buoyancy. You can read a book, or you can just float weightlessly on highly concentrated salt water. St. Nowhere Spa, close to mile 108, offers you the same experience. Still east of Cape Cross towards the direction of Brandberg is the Messam crater. The Messam crater is what is left of a huge subterranean volcanic chamber from the time when Africa and South America split during the breakup of Gondwanaland. The roof of this chamber collapsed after a huge release of gaseous pressure. Over time, this volcanic chamber has become exposed, and when flying over it, one can clearly see that the hills are arranged in a circular fashion. The barren reddish basalt rock and hills create a Martian-like landscape. Even some of the plants, such as the prehistoric-looking welwitschia, resemble a type of life form from another world. The welwitschia is also Namibia's national plant and has fascinated people for decades. They grow to a very old age, nearly 2,000 years, and produce cones instead of flowers. The Messam crater and Messam River contain some truly magnificent specimens. This area is great for a full day of exploring with a four-wheel drive vehicle. However, one will need to be well prepared and have maps or a good GPS guidance system. Information can be obtained from the Henties Bay Tourism Association. The famous Uchab Menhir is a landmark consisting of a single upright rock or monolith about the height of a man. This trail runs for approximately 312 kilometers, and your four-wheel driving skills will be tested on rocky terrain on some of the inclines along the trail. As we have already seen, the Dorob National Park is filled with various species of fauna and wildlife. The difference is that most of these animals are of the smaller variety. Along some of the dry river courses, such as the Umaruru, the Swakop, Uchab and Kuiseb rivers, one may come across larger wildlife such as Gemsbok, kudu, and even Hartmann's mountain zebra. The zebras are usually closer to mountainous areas and can be found around the Messam crater area. The Uchab River is sometimes visited by desert-adapted elephants. There is only one other group of desert-dwelling elephants in the world. They live in Mali, North Africa. Namibia's desert elephants have adapted to their dry, semi-desert environment by having longer legs and seemingly larger feet with a smaller body mass, according to other elephants. Travelers wishing to learn even more about the Dorob National Park can use some of the local tour operators and expert guides. There are several companies and places where one can find more information as required by individual needs. Sandboarding, for instance, can be enjoyed at various places in the dune belt. Other activities offered include paragliding, where the wind from the coast keeps you airborne above the gentle dune slopes. Quad bike excursions, with expert guides providing a thrilling ride in locations next to Long Beach, Dune 7 and at the Swakopmund Bridge. Just outside Swakopmund, on the way to Namibia'S and Arandis, lies the Rossmond Golf Course, a world-standard desert golf course complete with greens. At Namibia'S, one can take a peek at the Okakambe horse trails and even book a guided camel tour into the desert. If you really want adventure, you might wish to try some skydiving at the Swakopmund airfield. The instructors and crew are all highly experienced professionals who will take you up and bring you back down safely with a full dose of adrenaline. Several agencies offer scenic flights, such as pleasure flights and scenic air. The main activity, however, seems to be fishing, and in particular during the December holidays. While visitors and locals travel about inside the Dorob National Park, they need to make sure that they try to keep the park clean by following regulations on waste or littering on beaches and elsewhere in the park. The heads and other remains of caught and cleaned fish, as well as leftover bait, counts as rubbish too. This could attract wildlife and could also be disturbing for other visitors to the park. Although the Dorob National Park is land-based, people still have access to ocean activities. Recreational fishing with a permit is possible, and marine tour operators are able to bring individuals closer to the wonderful marine life in the vicinity of Walvis Bay. At the Walvis Bay Yacht Club are several boat excursions, with either motorized boats or luxury catamarans. Viewing is great for seals, dolphins, and the occasional whale. Bird watching is excellent from the luxury of the boats in the Walvis Bay Harbour, as well as Pelican Point. The skippers on board have encyclopedic knowledge of marine life and local history, and they will treat you with a fantastic seafood platter, fresh Walvis Bay oysters, and a taste of sherry, also locally known as Namibian coffee. Other water sports such as windsurfing, kite surfing, and kayaking are also available at well-known locations such as the Walvis Bay Lagoon. In addition to all it has to offer, Dorob National Park has been host to the movie-making industry as well. Any commercial filming done needs a permit. Special admittance permits can also be applied for in order to capture more restricted areas on film. The Dorob National Park, with its exquisite surroundings, has become increasingly popular for weddings, conferences, company launches, and business outings. When visitors wish to travel and see the various sites or partake in the activities, they need to familiarize themselves with and obey the rules and regulations, as well as laws contained in information pamphlets and other forms of publications. The thought of rules, laws, and regulations should not discourage visitors, as they are easy and straightforward. Maps and brochures with all the information on the areas where a permit is needed to enter are available at tourism information centres. Visitors can also contact the coastal offices of the Ministry of Environment and Tourism in either Swakopmund or Walvis Bay for any additional information. In many areas, people can enter the park and even take their pets along without obtaining a permit. Although fishing is allowed along the coastal stretch of the Dorob National Park, fishermen need to consult with the Ministry of Fisheries and Marine Resources, as has been the case for a long time concerning regulations and permits for angling along the coastline. There are certain areas in the park where one can and cannot visit, in some cases by vehicle and other cases on foot. In some cases, permits are required, and other cases it is not necessary. As a general guideline, it may help to know the main areas where one should be aware of what the regulations are. Many of the areas where one can or cannot go with a four-wheel drive or quad bike are very similar. For instance, access is given to the dune belt between Walvis Bay and Swakopmund, where the designated off-road vehicle ORV area is situated, as long as a permit has been obtained. Areas where it is permitted, or when travelling on any Dorob National Road, vehicles will not need to get a permit unless it is indicated otherwise. Beach driving is allowed where one can find clearly marked and authorised Ministry of Environment and Tourism routes, tracks and roads. There may be no driving in the beach area in front of Henties Bay, Vlotskasbaken, Swakopmund, Cape Cross, or any of the Namibia wildlife resorts, managed camping sites at mile 14, Jakkalspits, mile 72, and mile 108. East of the C34, self-drives are allowed as indicated on detailed maps, as well as GPS-indicated maps issued from the Henties Bay Tourism Association. A few exceptions have been made for quad bike enthusiasts. Quad bikes may travel without a permit west of the coastal road between Swakopmund and Henties Bay, on proclaimed roads and clearly marked Ministry of Environment and Tourism tracks and roads, except where prohibited. Quad bikes are not allowed on the beach between Swakopmund and Walvis Bay, all areas north of Henties Bay, and also the beaches of Henties Bay, Vlotskasbaken, Swakopmund, and Namibia Wildlife Resorts campsites. Quad bikes are strictly prohibited north of the Umaruru River, up to the Uchab River, and other motorized bikes are prohibited off the proclaimed roads north of the Umaruru River, up to the Uchab River. Quad bikes and other motorized bikes are allowed to travel 10 kilometers upstream in the Umaruru riverbed, but no further than that. Other areas which are not open to any vehicle traffic include the bird breeding areas, parts of the Swakop River, lichen fields, and any other area designated closed or exclusionary due to their sensitivity. The specially designated areas will help ensure that minimal damage is done to the fragile desert environment. As one can see, the Dorob National Park is truly a gem for Namibian conservation and leisure activities. Finding a balance between leisure, recreation and adventure, while at the same time preventing damage to or destruction of the fragile ecology, has been extremely challenging. One of the aims of proclaiming the Dorob National Park is to show that mankind and a very fragile desert ecosystem can coexist. The Dorob National Park has achieved an incredible balance that considers the needs of individuals, visitors, inhabitants, as well as the environment and well-being of this beautiful country. It has made available all the resources it has to offer with a conservation-minded approach. Humans can now not only enjoy the area for what it is, but at the same time be more respectful to the desert ecology, due to available information and efforts to educate the public about the importance of assisting in the conservation of the incredible richness of biodiversity and majestic desert landscape. A park that was established because we care. A park that wants to make a difference. The Dorob National Park. It is a beauty, that if lost, may never be regained. Protect this gem for future generations.